Welcome to the second episode of The Beats of Learning. I'm Stephan, who you met in the past episode, and Björn is also here.
Hello. Yeah, I'd like to introduce a social experiment we did in a large collaborative online course. So look forward to it.
In case you haven't met us on the other episodes, a little introduction about ourselves. I am a master graduate from the Film University in Babelsberg, close to Berlin. We've been working together, Björn and I, for 2 years or more by now, I think, among other things on WeLearn, trying out different workshop formats for intercultural groups, in focusing more on storytelling, but as you'll see today, one of them is applicable to other contexts other than storytelling.
Yeah, now I'm Björn Stockleben, Professor of Emerging Media Production here at Film University and in charge of a lot of international collaborative teaching projects.
Yeah, so let's start with the one that is not related to storytelling. We tried out ways to approach meeting online in a more creative way, in a more interesting way during the Corona crisis. And Björn, how did that go? What kind of methods did we develop?
Yeah, we had the problem that we had a couple of teams that were comprised of people from England, from Finland, from Germany, and other countries. And we wanted to bring them together to present their projects and to present them to industry partners and other affiliates. And we wanted to engage the people in a serious and maybe colloquial conversation. So we tried out an online space for this and designed it in a special way. We used a spatial online meeting platform. So these became popular like about 2 years ago, when people thought, well, can we add the dimension of space to online meeting spaces so that you can move to the people you want to talk to, that you can explore spaces as opposed to, for example, Zoom and other platforms, Microsoft Teams, WebEx, and the likes, where everybody's online or present all the time, unless you use breakout rooms, but still that's even also a different construct. So being able to freely browse an online room and using that as a meeting space was the idea. And the general conceptual idea behind the project presentation we did here was the method of an open space, so that you can freely go to different exhibitions or presentations and also leave them ad lib and join conversations as you see fit. So we started the design of the room with a classic plenary room, so with little chairs for people to sit down, and a lectern. This was for the introduction, so that at the introduction we would first explain to all people present how the next 2 hours would work out. So introducing some features of this particular platform, Gather Town. If you stand up on a megaphone, everybody in the whole room will hear you. So anybody who's a lecturer is heard by all, while you cannot hear people who are not in close proximity to you. So it has a real, well, it's a feel like in an actual lecture hall. So that's where we started, and where we gave first a short introduction about the rules of the day, and then a short, every team gave a 1-minute pitch on what would be visible or to see at their, well, virtual booth, so to say. And after like 15 minutes, so it was pretty short kickoff session, we asked them to walk into the second room, which was the room we designed as an open discussion space, exhibition and discussion space. You can see it here, and each of the teams had one room to create for themselves, to curate for themselves, and once you walk into one of these rooms, you can hear everybody inside the room, but the rest is shut off. So you don't hear any conversations from the greater hall, from the greater space. Within this room, so you can follow the conversations and you can explore assets. So for example, here's some content you can interact with. So this has just downloaded a PDF, sorry for that. So you just walk through the room, and when there's a yellow marking around that, an item, you can interact with that icon. So here, obviously, we had only connected PDFs. So, and the broken internet link. Now that's not very successful.
It's been a while since we.
It's been a while. Yeah. So a couple of PDFs. So I'll jump into one PDF. So you can browse the content that was provided by the students, and at the same time you can listen to the presentation or the conversation that's going on in this room. And we found out that they quickly formed conversation group, discussion groups, and that there was a lot of spontaneous conversation about the topic. So there was no strict linear presentation going on. Only occasionally somebody from the team would highlight one or the other asset that's exposed there, and everybody get very quick in contact. And if people were bored, they could still leave for another room and join the discussion that's going on there. So like you could introduce also video content. Here's the example of a YouTube clip that's integrated into the content available in that space. And this is like all those spaces were designed and created. So we gave them about an hour to explore the space. And we also said, so if you're bored or if you're through with it, just go downwards to the leisure room. So we provided a nice garden where also have some, we asked the students to create some cultural specific exhibition or leisure space. So obviously the Finnish students created a sauna. So you can interact or enter with the virtual sauna space. It's a nice cozy fire.
Nice.
That takes very long to load. Yeah, and here some karaoke and karaoke again with megaphones, so everybody in the room would hear the karaoke. That's a design decision that might be challenged next time. And due to the nature of the platform, you can gather with different people in small groups and focus your attention on the people you really want to interact with. We also created a game table, for example, or a storytelling space. This worked remarkably well. So people stuck around for more than half an hour after the official part finished, which is like the best I've ever experienced on any online platform. I've never experienced that on the classic platforms. It definitely is, well, a step forward when it comes to creating a very literally social situation. Yeah. Any questions, Stephan, or are you just amazed how well this worked out?
Both. I am amazed and I have questions. Were there any technical issues? Did people jump in quickly and had no problems?
I feel there weren't that many technical issues. I think first thing you have to figure out is how you are enabled to talk to people or not to talk to people, how that works. Once you realized that you only can talk to people in your close proximity or have to jump on the megaphone, it works quite well. So because it is kind of intuitively, if people are further away from you, they don't understand you. I found it important to have some kind of facilitation so that as teachers, you also approach people, for example, people who seem lost, so that you say, oh, hey, follow me, come, we go into the garden. So you need somebody to watch if everybody has understood the rules of the game. But if you have one or two people who take care of that, it's quite easy for people to hook up with this kind of, or to arrange themselves with this kind of presentation and interaction. I have to say that some of my older colleagues said, well, this is too tedious for me. So there was, maybe it's also a matter of taste. So people who used to play 8-bit games in the early 90s probably are very fond of that. And those who did not might find this a bit strange because it looks a bit childish. That to some people, some people can't accept that. They have a problem with that, doing serious things in a seemingly childish setting.
And how intuitive is the map design tool? So it was at least intuitive enough so that the students could create this Finland space down there.
So the designing here in this tool is, I would say, particularly easy. There's a comfortable editor, and as long as you don't plan on doing, or if you are ready to make compromises on the aesthetics, you can draw up something pretty quickly. And it's really not about perfection. And I guess there are other platforms around which you could also use, but I like the fact that you can really design large spaces with a lot of items if you want to. So it creates a lot of affordances to discover the space and make it more interesting. So it's you can design the space in a way that it encourages people to discover it and to interact with the space, and people stay because they want to explore the whole space, a bit like an adventure game, but with real people in. So they stay because of the design of the room, but they stay on because of the people they met then. So, and that's the purpose, of course, to meet people, not to explore the room. But it leads to that by affording people to linger around a little longer, the chance they will run into people or somebody will speak to them is increased.
And well, now we are, when we were at home during the pandemic, there were a lot of meetings among people who are from the same culture happening online. Do you think there's something in the method that makes it particularly useful for intercultural context? as opposed to national context or intracultural context?
I think what is important about this platform is that it gives a lot of options on how to get into a conversation. So you can you can listen to something. You can go just listen. You can listen to a presentation. You can engage in bilateral discussion, but it doesn't force any mode upon you. For example, if you are thrown on a classic online platform into a breakout group, it immediately forces you to interact with other people. Some people are more adept to that than others. And this might also be, there might also be, well, some cultural disposition to it. Although I like to think about it more in individual dispositions. But of course, this platform leaves you the choice of the mode you want to communicate. You can also use the chat to type if you like that more. And you can decide whether you like to approach people or you like to be approached. Whether you would like to first look what the people have done or talk with the people themselves. So, for example, if we go now into the, this room, the Unexpected Future room, holds a lot of documents where you can just read and look and watch. And it really depends on the people and also on cultural habits, whether you rather like to consume first before you get into a discussion, or whether you like more to learn by discussion. And less than other platforms, this prescribes a certain way to do it, but you can find your way. Still, it's a matter of designing the whole interaction for the people who are running the meeting to be aware of cultural differences and possible opportunities you have to give and modes of presentation to be used. So there might be people who are totally fine to be dropped directly into an open space because they're familiar with that, because it's also in some business cultures, methods like open space are very prevalent, used a lot, and in others you have more presentations you consume more before you really talk, and this is what you have to consider, and this is also why we took this threefold structure. So first, really telling people where you are, why you are here, and what we are doing. Then giving the opportunity to explore in a way you like, and then transitioning to another room, to another setting, another context, to say, well, it's okay to talk about anything else now. So, which the room above the middle room doesn't afford, talking about general things, colloquial things or so, while the room to the downwards affords it. And also by going to a room, into a certain place, you can show, I'm ready now to talk about anything. Things. For example, you can sit at the bar and indicate, well, I'm ready for a chat. You can come here. You can also hide behind a bush and say, no, please not.
Right. Okay, cool. Are you planning on using this on future events?
Yeah, definitely. So for online events, it's very well suitable for larger online events where you really want to have an interaction among the people, especially in international online events, because of the reasons I've given before. Yeah. Not necessarily always with the same platform, but I see a lot of potential in this. I call them spatial meeting or spatial chat platforms, because this spatial dimension really adds a lot to how you can design the space and how you can design and influence the interactions. And I think it's an under-researched area. It's underused so far. and especially in mainstream academics, I guess so. I don't have any proof of that.
Yeah. Well, maybe someday.
Someday, yeah. Yeah, maybe already, and I just don't know. So please prove me wrong. It's totally okay. I would be happy to see more of this.
Well, if the viewer knows better, then let us know.
In the YouTube comments, if this ever happens to be put on YouTube.
If it is on YouTube, like and subscribe.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go to the next one. So the other tool that we would like to present on this one, on this meeting, is one of the first, if not the first, that we started working on under the WeLearn umbrella. And it is based on a storytelling tabletop game called Fiasco.
That's a good start for a title.
Yeah, it is a very self-aware title that I really like. When people say tabletop games, or especially tabletop role-playing games, I think a lot of people think of Dungeons and Dragons or GURPS and other such games, which are very complex and come with a very fat book of several hundred pages that you have to learn to get the basics on, and usually you only learn to play with an experienced player with you. Fiasco is much simpler. Fiasco you can buy online, and it's the instruction manual is less than 100 pages and very intuitive and neatly designed. And
you just say it's less than 100 pages.
Yeah, I don't know by heart how long the thing
that would still be quite a lot, but it's as far as I know, it's much shorter. So you can really learn it in a half an hour or so.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it, and it actually is 134 pages, but it is a lot of them are pictures and like materials that you need to use to play, like cards. So you can learn on an afternoon. And if you play it with someone that knows it, you can learn it while playing it and then immediately reproduce it. As I mentioned, it is a very quick game to play in comparison to these other games that take several sessions to play over a campaign. Fiasco, the pitch for Fiasco is to create a Coen Brothers movie in the same time it takes to watch one. It's slightly exaggerated for rhetoric reasons, I think, but it's kind of like that. It's called Fiasco because it's based on these caper films, in the sense that it's an ensemble cast and the story gets more chaotic as it goes. And the goal is to, together with your group, create the story as you play out these roles that you create for yourselves. And the idea behind putting this into a workshop was, it is a very fun game to play. It is easy to learn, and storytelling, it helps bring out these creative muscles of people. And people like to work on stories together, at least in our context at the Film University. And nothing, at least nothing spoke against it as an intercultural tool, as it didn't require specific knowledge of a specific culture to do anything. When we started using it, we adapted it for an online setting. I can share my screen so you can see it. This is where people would begin. And because at the beginning of the game, you have to decide on a playset. A playset is basically the setting of the story. A while ago, there used to be more settings on this web page, but I think they realized it was not such a smart idea to have them for free, and have switched for paid models. And these four are the four playsets that come with the the rule set, which is also, it's not expensive at all. It's something like $15. So you pick a playset. The Ice is a good example of a playset that is based on or inspired by a movie. It's inspired by Fargo from the Coen brothers. A lot of the playsets will be based on well-known caper films or heist films. So you pick play and you decide the number of players. We always did 4 players in our workshops, which I think is an ideal amount of people. Otherwise, the game gets too long. Or if it's 3 people, not enough people get to know each other at the same time. And you create your character based on the relationships the character has to other characters. So it's an outside-in perspective. So you say, for example, between player 1 and player 2, you have a main category of crime relationship. 2 and 3 have a friendship relationship. 3 and 4 have a work relationship, and 4 and 1 have a romance relationship. And you keep doing this until you get more details. I'm just doing this.
If you want, you can roll the dice, or you can consciously choose something.
Yeah, you can roll the dice, but this process is one of the most important ones, and one that because by doing this step by step, people organically and automatically start figuring out what kind of character am I.
Yeah.
So you discover it with everybody else. So I'm doing this somewhat randomly for the sake of speed. But so just looking at now, player 1 and player 2 are smugglers of artifacts or endangered species. And player 1 has a one-time fling, has had a one-time fling with player 4. So this constellation starts taking shape, and then you add even a detail to each relationship, which can be a location, a need, or an object. In the case of 4 players, you usually do 2 needs. Again, with the example of player 1 is a smuggler with player 2, and both of them share the need to get even with a scientist. So which scientist, who that scientist is, how that relates to them being smugglers, we don't know. Like instinctively, I'm thinking they smuggle endangered species for the scientist who cut them off from a specific award that he got for his scientific discoveries of this endangered species, something like that. And on the romance fling, they have a need to get out of a work detail that is killing you. So maybe they're co-workers or whatever. By doing this, by the end, you usually have a pretty good idea of the conflict that your characters can have in the story. And then you go to actually playing out the story.
So what, if you're setting out a context like that, would it be possible, or did you try to lay out intercultural conflicts here? Because of course you could have like an intercultural setting here enshrined into the playset.
Yeah.
Did you try that, or is that even advisable?
And we tried it at a later stage. Initially, this workshop we tried in a handful of different ways, probably even more, that like half a dozen or something more. And we try to increasingly make the relationship with intercultural contexts more explicit. On the first stage, it was intercultural in the sense that the teams were intercultural. I think the first one we did was with a university in Finland, which had a very international student body. And our student body is also quite intercultural. So most groups would not have two of the same nationality together. And once they were done playing the game, they felt like they got to know each other and they had fun together, but did not necessarily engage with intercultural competencies other than how to get to know each other. So we developed a playset like this, but focused on a university context with some specifically intercultural relationships or needs or objects or locations, as you can see in the structure that is like here. But once you have the setup done, which is the stage of the game, you move to actually playing the game. And the game is built around 2 rounds, and each round has one character in the spotlight once for a scene. So 2 rounds with 4 players would be 8 scenes in the end. And being the spotlight means you have to initiate the scene. You have to be a main character in the scene. You have to say what the scene is about. And you decide which other character is working with you on that scene. And once you decide that, ideally, you have to improvise what happens in the scene. This puts the players in the position to improvise characters of improvisational theater, which is difficult for some, and it's okay if they don't feel comfortable doing that, but it does bring the most out of the experience, because you are allowed to be a personality that you are not usually, and that can lead to interesting discussions about the characters, or it allows you to be, for example, a professor if you're a student, or a racist class representative, assuming you are not racist, which I assume anyway. So you play the game, 8 scenes would be in the case of 4 players. And by the end, like coming at scene 6, 7, 8, you should figure out like a conclusion to the game. In this case of the mural we designed, there's a cheat sheet down here, so you can remember the rules if you forgot, and some other useful links and tools. This was given to students who participated anyway, but we discovered that it's advisable to explain the game as you go instead of explaining the game and letting them do it.
Yeah.
So we would do the setup and then break and then come back, and we would explain how to play the scenes. They would play scenes, break, see how the stories are going, and play to the end. We asked the students to write short summaries of each scene, so that by the end they could write down the story that they told together in a 1-page synopsis, which was always a good result to have. And I feel like a lot of them felt amused or proud even of the work they did. And it's quite impressive how different the stories can be just based on one single playset. Yeah, so feedback was usually very good in regards of having fun, getting to know each other. And a lot of the students, or a decent amount of them, said they would like to play this game with their friends. And I would say this is already a good contribution to the student life. But we wanted to make it more specific to intercultural context. So we tried creating our own playset, which I can show you now. Just a second.
It sounds like a very good intercultural icebreaker. So it's to get people into conversation, and it feels like it's less about the story per se than how we approach stories and how we are thinking, to learn about how people are thinking, what ideas they have, what moves them, what is humor for them, and what maybe not. So there's a lot of potential in that. And on the other side, well, the idea of crafting intercultural story context, say a playset. We spoke to that use case. Also seems to be very appealing. But yeah, please show. I'm happy.
Yeah, so we did. There's a tool online as well. Everything that I showed up until, with the exception of the actual rulebook, is for free online. So there's a tool that you can use to create your own playset. And this is the result of the one we did. It's just a PDF and you type in whatever you want. So conservative professor, like the conservative student, for example. So we did a series of relationships, needs, objects, and locations that are focused on a university context. And one thing that we kept in mind, which I think it really is essential, is to not be PG-13, not to be for everyone, to be a little polemic, a little. It shouldn't necessarily be nice. You are allowed to play bad people. You are allowed to play difficult personalities, and these usually make a story more interesting. And in the end, we are also talking about students in universities. So, for example, one relationship was two very good friends. One falls in love, not the other. This already gives it a feeling of a conflict. Experienced doorman, newly enrolled student, so always having a little disbalance in the relationship. This helps the players to get ideas for conflicts, right? So we tried this out, not online, but in real life, and as you can see here, it automatically creates relationship cards, which you can print out and give the players. And we played it with two groups of students at the same time. This is, by the way, a good workshop to do with, I would say, up to 4 groups of people at the same time.
So what make it 16 people? So for a small course group, small to medium size,
yeah, exactly. And we tried it out with them, and they had almost exactly the same feedback that we had on the other workshops, which means they had fun, they got to know each other, and like to what you said earlier, they got to know the sense of humor of each other, which I think is a very specific and cultural thing. But it's not like they necessarily train specific intercultural competences.
Well, intercultural discussion and conversation is a specific competence, but it's if you want to train or force certain situations, I think it's difficult if you want to be explicit on like discrimination and such issues. I think it's more about them discovering and exploring than to impose something on them. So the intercultural competence is more among, well, it has to come in a subtle way, or you can suggest it, but you cannot force it.
Yeah, exactly. And by the end, what I would say is the best version of the game is indeed to do one of these play sets that remind people of a specific movie that they like, and really embrace it as a game. And not not as a obligatory learning experience for which you get credit points. It ideally should be something that gets them in a good mood, and maybe they use it in their social contexts, which is in any case something that is important for students arriving at universities and in a new culture or in their own culture.
It could be interesting to adapt it to a movie that's popular in a particular culture. So many of the templates I've seen refer to like Western cinema. So maybe it could be interesting if people from different cultures will create their own playset, and then you play a Finnish set and the German set with the whole group. So that could be an enriching experience because obviously the reference to local or national pop culture plays a big role in the engagement and fun in the game. Although you said the Erasmus scenario worked as well, but
that's true. That is a very good idea to do, for example, a German one based on the lives of others. Das Leben der anderen, on a Stasi-related playset. It could be an interesting way to approach it. And I assume any country will have interesting culture that they can adapt playsets to their culture. So that might be an interesting challenge that the viewer can try out on their own context. As I mentioned, all this is for free online, and the playset is not free, but it's accessible, I would say, and is worth it. I have definitely played it several times by now, also privately. And I guess one thing to segue out of this episode and give a tease for the next one. This was maybe the first one that we tried out, the first workshop we tried out. But this inspired this idea of working improvisationally in an acting context. So improvising roles that are not who you are in your daily life. And this inspired the workshop that our colleague Lara will tell you about in the next Beats of Learning.
Great. Looking forward to it. Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Listen to the beats of learning.